Hi, the first program that we're going to do is we're going to wire wrap a long, narrow object. This would work with any long, narrow object that is three-dimensional, and in this case I'm using a Tibetan quartz crystal. What we need, the tools that we need today are going to be a straightener, a polishing cloth, flat nose pliers, and be sure to use the flat nose pliers that don't have ridges or grooves on the inside, round nose pliers, wire cutters, and while it's not critical, this is a great tool to soften the edges of the wire. So I like to use reading glasses or a visor as well so I can see the really small details. So let's get started. First, we have this crystal, and for this type of project, you really don't need to measure out the wire. I normally just go for about a foot and click. Then, if you happen to have one of these tools that are coated in plastic, this is a really great tool to straighten the wire. When you straighten the wire, it softens the wire as well. And then you want to polish it a little bit. It just makes it a little easier to work with. Now go about 3/4 of the way down. I'm going to move these out of the way here. About 3/4 of the way down, start with the bottom of the crystal, where it's a little more narrow than the other bits. And then you twist around and around until you get to the very top of the crystal. Then you make a loop just with your hands, nothing fancy. And with the short piece, you grab your round nose pliers. This is what you're going to use for the loop. The higher up on the round nose pliers that you go, the larger the loop. And so think about what you're going to be stringing this on. If you're going to be using a very narrow piece of string, then you won't need as large of a loop. You just twist it and then use your finger. Make the loop, like so. Now with your fingers, use this other wire to twist it about 3 times. So this is what we have so far. If you were to stop now with this piece, the crystal would fall out fairly easily because there's nothing anchoring it on top. So instead of just leaving it this way, we're going to use this piece of wire to wrap it a couple more times and then back up to the top. Now, with this, just use your finger until you can't reach anymore, and then grab your flat nose pliers and soften the edge by just clamping this down. Make sure that when you make this that you don't have any sharp edges, because clothes or skin would get stuck on there. So you can either tuck it on the inside or tuck it under, but just make sure that there's no sharp edges. Now you'll decide which side is the front and which side is the back, and you're going to start adding some visual interest to this piece. For this, I'm going to use my round nose pliers, and I'm just going to twist it like this. Make little zigzags. This serves 2 purposes. It adds the visual interest, but it also tightens the piece so that way it'll stay in there more firmly. Now, when you do this, make sure that it's really well balanced at the end, so that way it'll lay nicely on your chest, like this. I'm going to show another design of basically this loop, and another way that you can do this same wire crystal combination. So once again, I'm going to grab my wire. I'm going to straighten the wire. And then polish it. And use the same technique that we did before, But instead of going 3/4 of the way down, I'm only going to go halfway down, and I'm going to use a double terminated quartz crystal phantom. The real interesting part here is that it's darker in the center. Also, it's not perfectly aligned, so instead of starting at the ends, I'm starting in the middle because there's this nice groove that I'll be able to use on this piece. So I start here in the middle, and then I twist. And I'm going to make 3 twists. 1, 2, 3. That's really grabbing it well in place. Then I'm going to lift it up and do the same twist here. 1, 2, 3. Then from here, I've got 2 really long pieces of wire. With one of them, I'm going to do something really fun. I'm going to use my round nose pliers and create kind of an ivy wire effect. So I'm going to wrap the wire around the round nose pliers. So it's like a tendril on a grapevine. And then I'm going to click it with my wire cutters. Make sure you hold the piece of wire or it could fly out and hit you in the eye, and you don't want that. So as you see, I've got kind of a tendril design for the tip instead of just a single loop. And this edge is pretty sharp, so in this particular case, I'm going to use this, what they call a cupper. And I'm going to put this on the very end of the piece, and it has a diamond grid on the tip of it, so you will soften the edges and turn it into a cup at the end, so it won't hurt or scratch when people wear it. Okay, that's not quite as well done. It might take you a minute of just twisting it to make it nice and soft and smooth on all of the edges, but you see I'm just twisting it. Now look, I've got all of this extra wire left. Oh, and don't worry about the wire that I cut off. I'll be able to use those to make ear wires or some other piece, so don't throw it away. You'll always be able to use it again. I'm a huge fan of spirals on my designs, and you only need about 3 inches of wire to make a spiral design, so I'll go ahead and clip it about 4 fingers away. And now grab this. You need 2 tools for this. You need the round nose pliers and the flat nose pliers. First, get out my glasses. Using the very finest tip of this piece, we'll twist it. Until there's a nice, simple loop. Then we're going to use the flat nose pliers and use it to grab and have a steady hand, and then you twist with your other hand. And it's okay if there are little gaps here and there with the spiral. Nothing is perfectly symmetrical in nature, and this beautiful spiral design mimics nature in that way. The Japanese actually believe that you want to have a slight imperfection in your sculpture or your design to show that it wasn't machine made. So as you see, I've created a nice spiral, but it's on the back end. We don't want this to be the focal part of the design. So all you have to do is grab that spiral, and the good thing about using wire is it bends. I just moved it to the front. So now, as you see, we've got this lovely finished product of a smoky quartz Tibetan crystal with a tendril hole and a spiral.